I am 98 years old, and there is something I need to tell you before I run out of time. Something about sex. Yes, sex. I know you did not expect an old man with trembling hands and a voice that cracks to talk about this, but that is exactly why I must. Because nobody told me. Nobody warned me what would happen when that part of life ended, and I spent years drowning in silence because I thought I was the only one. When I was 62, I was still having sex with my wife. Not often, maybe once a month, sometimes less, but it was there. It was part of us. And then one night I could not. My body refused. I tried, God knows I tried, but nothing happened. My wife touched my face and said, "It was okay. It happens. Do not worry." But I did worry. I worried every single day after that. Because the next time it happened again and again. And then I stopped trying because the shame was too heavy to carry into the bedroom. Nobody tells you that losing your sexual ability feels like losing your identity as a man. Nobody warns you that you will look at yourself in the mirror and see something broken, something useless, something that stopped being what it was supposed to be. I felt like I'd been erased, like the man I was for 60 years had disappeared and left behind this empty shell that could not even perform the most basic function of manhood. I started avoiding my wife, not just physically, but in every way. I would stay in the garage longer than I needed to. I would go to bed early or pretend to be asleep when she came near me. I built walls around myself made of fear and humiliation, and she stood on the other side, wondering what she had done wrong. She had done nothing wrong. I was the one who was failing. I was the one who could not face her because every time I looked at her, I saw my own inadequacy reflected back at me. The worst part was not the lack of sex itself. The worst part was that I stopped touching her completely. I stopped holding her hand. I stopped kissing her goodnight. I stopped all of it because I was afraid that any physical contact would lead to expectations I could not meet. So I withdrew. I disappeared into myself and left her alone in a marriage that had become a graveyard of unspoken words and unanswered questions. Years went by like that. 5 years, maybe 6. I lost count. My wife and I became roommates who shared a house, but not a life. We ate dinner in silence. We watched television on opposite sides of the couch. We went to sleep in the same bed, but miles apart. And I told myself this was just how it was now. This was what getting old meant, this slow death of intimacy and connection. Then one afternoon, when I was 68, I was sitting in the kitchen, and my wife came in and sat down across from me. She looked tired. More than tired. She looked defeated. And she said, "I cannot do this anymore." I thought she meant the marriage. I thought she was leaving me. My heart stopped. But she said, "I cannot live like this with you so far away from me. I miss you. I miss my husband. I do not care about sex. I never cared as much as you think I did. I just want you back." I broke. Right there at the kitchen table, I broke into pieces. I cried like I had not cried since I was a child. All those years of carrying shame and fear and silence came pouring out of me. And she held my hand across the table and let me cry. She did not try to fix it. She did not tell me it was okay. She just sat there with me in my pain. And that was the first moment of real intimacy we had shared in years. We talked that day, really talked. For the first time since my body stopped working the way I wanted it to, I told her the truth. I told her I felt like less of a man. I told her I was ashamed. I told her I thought she must hate me for failing her. And she said something I will never forget. She said, "You have not failed me. You failed yourself by believing that your worth as a man was only in that one thing." She was right. I had spent my entire adult life believing that my masculinity was tied to my sexual performance, that if I could not have sex, I was not really a man. But masculinity is not your body. It is not what you can or cannot do in bed. It is how you show up. It is how you love. It is whether you choose to stay or run when things get hard. After that conversation, things changed. Slowly, but they changed. I started touching my wife again, not sexually, just touching. I would hold her hand when we walked. I would put my arm around her when we sat together. I would kiss her forehead before we went to sleep. And those small gestures brought back something I thought was dead. They brought back closeness, tenderness, love that did not need performance or proof. If you are listening to this and you are struggling with the same thing I struggled with, if you feel like you are less because your body is not what it used to be, stay with me. There are people here who understand, people who will not judge you. Subscribe if you want to keep hearing from an old man who learned his lessons too late, but still wants to share them before he goes. I want to tell you what happened after that conversation with my wife, after I finally let the walls come down, because it was not easy. Talking about it once did not fix everything. The shame I had been carrying for years did not just disappear because we had one honest moment at the kitchen table. It stayed with me. It followed me into every room, every touch, every time I looked at her and remembered what I used to be able to give her and could not anymore. But something did shift. My wife started reaching for me again, not in a sexual way, but in small ways I had forgotten existed. She would touch my shoulder when she walked past me. She would lean her head against my chest when we watched television. She would take my hand and hold it for no reason at all. And at first I flinched. I pulled away because every touch felt like a reminder of what I could not do, what I could not be for her anymore. One night she asked me why I kept pulling away, and I told her the truth. I said, "Every time you touch me, I feel like you are waiting for something I cannot give you." And she looked at me with tears in her eyes and said, "I am not waiting for anything. I just want to feel close to you again. That is all I've ever wanted." It took me months to believe her, months to stop interpreting every gesture of affection as a demand or an expectation. My mind had been so twisted by shame that I could not see love for what it was anymore. I could only see it as something I was failing to reciprocate in the way I thought I was supposed to. But slowly, touch by touch, I started to let her back in. I started to understand that intimacy was not just one thing. It was 1,000 small things. It was her hand in mine. It was sitting close enough to feel the warmth of her body. It was talking in the dark before we fell asleep. I also started to notice other men my age. I would see them at the grocery store, at the park, sitting alone on benches looking lost. I wondered how many of them were carrying the same secret I had carried. How many of them had pushed their wives away because they were too ashamed to admit that their bodies had betrayed them. How many of them were sitting in silent marriages waiting to die, believing they had nothing left to offer. There was a man I used to see at the pharmacy every month when I picked up my prescriptions. He was probably in his late 60s, maybe early 70s. He always looked defeated. His shoulders slumped like he was carrying the weight of the world. One day we ended up in line together and we started talking. Just small talk at first. The weather, the long wait. But then he said something that made me stop. He said, "Getting old is the loneliest thing I have ever done." I looked at him and I saw myself. I saw the version of me that had spent years hiding in the garage, avoiding my wife, convinced that I had nothing left to give. And I did something I never thought I would do. I told him the truth. I said, "I know what you mean. I spent years feeling like that, feeling like I was not a man anymore because my body stopped working the way it used to." And he just stared at me, his eyes filled with tears. He did not say anything. He just nodded. And I knew I had touched something in him that nobody had touched in a long time. We talked for 20 minutes in that pharmacy. Two old men standing by the prescription counter talking about things we'd never said out loud to anyone. He told me he had not touched his wife in 3 years. He told me he slept in a different room because he could not stand the guilt of lying next to her and feeling like a failure. He told me he thought about leaving her sometimes, just disappearing because he believed she would be better off without him. I told him what my wife had told me, that our worth is not in what our bodies can do, that love is not performance, that intimacy is not just sex. I do not know if he believed me. I do not know if it changed anything for him. But I think about him sometimes. I wonder if he ever went home and told his wife the truth. I wonder if he is still alive. I wonder if he found his way back to her before it was too late. Because that is the thing nobody tells you about getting old. Time does not slow down just because you finally figured something out. It keeps moving. It keeps taking. And the people you love will not be here forever. My wife is 96 now. Her mind is not what it used to be. Some days she remembers me. Some days she does not. And I sit with her and I hold her hand and I am grateful for every single moment I get. But I also carry the weight of all those years I wasted. All those years I spent hiding from her because I was too proud and too scared to admit I was struggling. If I could go back, I would tell my 62-year-old self to stop running. I would tell him that the shame he is carrying will destroy him if he lets it. I would tell him that his wife does not need him to be perfect. She just needs him to be present. She needs him to stop disappearing. She needs him to talk to her, to touch her, to let her in. But I cannot go back. None of us can. All we have is now, this moment, this breath, this chance to stop hiding and start living before it is too late. The hardest thing I ever had to learn was that my body failing did not mean I was failing. It took me 70 years to understand that. 70 years of believing that being a man meant being strong, being capable, being able to perform. And when my body could not do what it used to do, I thought I had lost everything that mattered. But I was wrong. What mattered was still there. It was in the way I looked at my wife. It was in the way I listened when she talked. It was in the mornings I made her coffee and brought it to her in bed. It was in the nights I held her when she could not sleep. Those things did not require a working body. They required a present heart. And for years, I had given her neither. After my wife and I started rebuilding what we had broken, I began to see things differently. I began to notice the small moments I had ignored for decades. The way she smiled when I walked into the room, the way she touched my arm when she wanted to tell me something, the way she leaned into me when we sat together. These were not accidents. These were acts of love. And I'd been blind to them because I was too busy mourning what I could no longer do. One evening, we were sitting on the porch watching the sun go down. My wife was quiet. I just looking out at the sky turning orange and pink. I reached over and took her hand. She looked at me surprised because I had not done that in so long. And she said, I missed this, just you holding my hand. I realized then how much I'd taken from her by disappearing, how much closeness I had stolen from both of us because I was drowning in my own shame. I started doing small things again, things I had stopped doing when the shame took over. I started kissing her forehead before I left the house. I started sitting next to her on the couch instead of across the room. I started asking her about her day and actually listening to the answer. And these small things, these gestures that seemed like nothing, they brought us back to life. They reminded us that we were not just two old people waiting to die. We were still us. We were still together. But I also started thinking about all the men who never get to this place, all the men who die alone because they were too proud to admit they were struggling. I think about the man I met at the pharmacy. I think about how many others there are like him, men who have convinced themselves that they are worthless because their bodies stopped cooperating, men who have built walls so high that nobody can reach them anymore. I went to a doctor once, years after the problem started. I was too embarrassed to go at first, but eventually I worked up the courage. The doctor told me it was normal. He said it happens to most men as they age. He said there were medications, treatments, things I could try. But I did not want medications. I did not want to force my body to do something it did not want to do anymore. I wanted to accept it. I wanted to stop fighting against reality and start living inside it. That was the turning point for me. Acceptance. Not giving up, but accepting. Accepting that this was my body now. Accepting that I was not going to be 30 again. Accepting that my worth as a man, as a husband, as a human being, was not tied to my sexual performance. Once I accepted that, the shame started to lift. Not all at once, but slowly, like fog burning off in the morning sun. My wife and I found new ways to be intimate. We would lie in bed and just talk. We would hold each other without any expectation of what had to happen next. We would kiss, not as a prelude to something else, but just to kiss, to feel close, to remind ourselves that we were still alive, still together, still capable of tenderness. And those moments became more precious to me than any physical act ever was. I wish someone had told me this when I was younger. I wish someone had sat me down and said, listen, your body is going to change. Your desires are going to change. Your abilities are going to change. And none of that means you stop being a man. None of that means you stop being worthy of love. But nobody told me that. So I had to learn it the hard way through years of suffering and isolation and shame. If you are listening to this and you recognize yourself in my story, If you have been hiding from your wife or your partner because you feel like you have nothing left to give, please hear me. You are not broken. You are not worthless. You are not less of a man. You are just older. And getting older means letting go of who you used to be so you can become who you are now. It means redefining what intimacy looks like. It means finding new ways to connect, new ways to love, new ways to show up. There is still time. Not much, but some. Do not waste it the way I did. Do not let shame steal years from you. Do not let pride keep you from the person who loves you. Talk to her. Tell her the truth. Let her see you. Let her love you as you are, not as you wish you were. Because that is what love is. It is not about perfection. It is about presence. It is about staying. It is about choosing each other even when everything falls apart. If these words mean something to you, if you want to keep hearing what an old man learned too late, subscribe. I have more to say and not much time to say it, but I will keep talking as long as I can, because maybe my mistakes can save someone else from making them. Maybe my pain can spare someone else theirs. The truth is, losing my ability to have sex taught me what love actually was. It stripped away everything I thought mattered and left only what was real. And what was real was my wife. Her presence, her patience, her willingness to stay with me even when I had given her every reason to leave. That was love, not the performance, not the act, just the staying, just the choosing, just the being there. And I am grateful I finally learned that before it was too late. I am 98 years old now, and my wife is fading. Some days she knows who I am. Some days she calls me by her father's name. Some days she looks at me like I am a stranger who wandered into her room. But I sit with her every single day. I hold her hand. I talk to her even when she does not respond. I tell her I love her even when I am not sure she understands the words. Because this is what I learned. This is what all those years of struggling taught me. Love is not about what you get back. It is about what you give when there is nothing left to give. I think about the man I used to be. The man at 62 who thought his life was over because his body stopped working the way he wanted it to. And I want to go back and shake him. I want to tell him he was wasting his time. I want to tell him that the best years were still ahead if he would just stop running and start living. But I cannot go back. None of us can. All we have is now. This moment, this breath, this chance to do something different. If you are reading this or listening to this, and you are that man, the one who is hiding, the one who is ashamed, the one who thinks he has nothing left to offer, I am telling you right now that you are wrong. You have everything to offer. Your presence, your attention, your willingness to be vulnerable, your courage to stay even when it is hard. That is what matters. That is what your wife needs. That is what will sustain you when everything else falls away. I wasted years. I wasted so many years believing a lie about what it meant to be a man. And I cannot get those years back. But you still have yours. You still have time to make a different choice. Time to walk into the room instead of hiding in the garage. Time to reach for her hand instead of pulling away. Time to tell her the truth instead of carrying the shame alone. Time to let her love you as you are instead of punishing yourself for what you are not. My wife will not be here much longer. I can see it. I can feel it. The way her breathing has changed. the way her body has grown lighter, like she is already halfway gone. And when she leaves, I will be alone with all the memories of our life together, the good ones and the bad ones, the years we were close and the years I pushed her away. And I will have to live with the knowledge that I could have had more. I could have had more closeness, more connection, more love if I had not been so afraid. But I will also have the good years, the years after I stopped hiding, the years after I let her back in, the years we spent rebuilding what I had almost destroyed. Those years are worth everything. They are worth all the pain it took to get there. They are worth the humiliation of admitting I was wrong. They are worth the fear of being vulnerable. Because in those years, I finally learned what it meant to love someone, not with my body, not with my performance, but with my whole self, my broken, aging, imperfect self. And that is what I want to leave you with. You do not have to be perfect to be loved. You do not have to be young or strong or capable in the ways you used to be. You just have to be present. You just have to show up. You just have to let the people who love you see you as you are. That is enough. That has always been enough. We are just too proud and too scared to believe it until it is almost too late. I have lived almost a century. I have seen wars. I have buried friends. I have watched the world change in ways I never imagined. But the hardest thing I ever had to do was admit to my wife that I was not the man I used to be. And the best thing I ever did was let her love me anyway. That changed everything. That saved me. That gave me a reason to keep living even when my body was falling apart. So if you take anything from this, take this. Do not wait. Do not waste years like I did. Do not let shame steal your life from you. Talk to her. Touch her. Let her in. Let her see you. Let her love you. Because time is running out for all of us. And when it is gone, you will not wish you had performed better. You will wish you had been braver. You will wish you had loved harder. You will wish you had stayed instead of running. My hands are shaking as I say this. My voice is breaking. But I needed to tell you. I needed to get this out before I run out of time. Because maybe it will help someone. Maybe it will save someone from making the mistakes I made. Maybe it will give someone the courage to stop hiding and start living. If this resonates with you, if these words touched something in you, share this. Leave a comment and tell me what you are going to do differently. Tell me you are going to stop running. Tell me you are going to go home and hold her hand. Tell me you are going to choose love over shame. Subscribe because I have more truths to share. And not much time left. The clock is ticking. For you, for me, for all of us. What are you going to do with the time you have left?